In Appalachia and throughout the South, the traditional New Year's Day meal consists of black-eyed peas, some type of greens, and some type of pork. There's symbolism behind all of those, and that's just really common. You're probably already familiar with it. I have a funny story about it, though. It was not common in my family. I never even heard of it growing up. Now, New Year's Day is Paul's birthday, my brother Paul, so he's a New Year's baby. So we always paid close attention to that day, but nobody ever told us about eating those things. And after I started writing for the Blind Pig and the Acorn, my blog, after I, of course, quickly found that tradition. So I couldn't wait to tell Granny and Pap, and I asked them if they had ever heard of it, and they said no. But Granny's answer was the funniest. I said, yeah, if you eat greens, black-eyed peas and pork on New Year's Day, you're supposed to be healthy, wealthy, and wise in the new year. And Granny, without missing a beat, said, oh, well, no wonder we've always been poor. Which was really funny, of course. Anyway, so I did not grow up in a family that ate that meal, although it's a meal that we enjoy today. So while this meal is, like I said, very common throughout the South and throughout Appalachia, there's many variations on it, and there's many kind of symbolisms behind it. Of course, some people think the greens, that symbolizes money, so you have money in the coming year. Now, some people like mustard greens, some people like turnip greens, some people like it all mixed up together, both of those, maybe even some spinach or some kale thrown in there with it. And when it comes to cooking them, people do it different. There's all kinds of different ways. Some people parboil the greens 2 or 3 times and empty out that and then cook it with some type of pork in it. Some people prefer to kind of boil them and then saute them in bacon fat or pork along with some ham or something like that. So many variations on that one. The black-eyed peas, they're supposed to represent, so the pea part is like money, and then the little black part is coins, looks like coins. So that symbolizes, again, money going to come into your life in the new year. When it comes to the pork portion, there's a lot of variations with that as well. You'll hear about people eating ham hocks, smoked hog jows, ham. Some people like backbones and ribs. That's a really popular one in Appalachia, in the mountains of Appalachia, so that varies a lot. Some people just end up using side meat or bacon to season their greens and also their black-eyed peas, and then just eat that on the side. So there's lots of variations when it comes to each of the things that are common. But the thing about the pork is, the thought behind it is that pigs, they root forward, they go forward. Like chickens kind of scratch and go back and then eat. So pork, that's the theory behind it, it has to be pork, is that pigs are going forward, they root forward. Another thing that goes along with it is a lot of tradition or folklore. You'll find some families that actually put a dime or a piece of money in their greens or in their beans even, and then in their black-eyed peas, and then whoever finds it, they get the luck for the coming year. Some people will do that with cabbage. Instead of the greens, they serve boiled cabbage, and the same thing, they'll put a coin in there, and then whoever finds it is the lucky one for the coming year. I've heard of the tradition of some families with the black-eyed peas while they're cooking. Everybody in the family has to take a turn stirring them, and that ensures everyone in the family will have good luck. So all kinds of folklore and many variations about this meal that I did not grow up eating, but that is very, very popular. I bet you already knew about it. But today, that's the meal that I'm going to be fixing for my family. So the greens I'm cooking today are mustard greens. These are mustard greens that we grew, that we planted back last fall. So I've just been out this morning and harvested them. So I'm going to give them a good rinse in here. If you have really big stems, it's a good idea to kind of remove them. These are kind of still, I was able to get some pretty small ones, so the stems are not so bad in the leaf part, but you can break off the stem, and especially if you have great old big leaves, sometimes you need to actually cut out the stem in the middle. But for me, I'm just going to kind of break off the bigger ones at the bottom and leave them, because these are fairly small leaves. So this one, you can see, kind of has a larger stem there, so you can kind of just pull it out that way if you do come across one, especially if you purchase yours, they may be bigger stems. And it's not that they're not edible, it's just that they kind of get chewy. If you want to come over here and stand beside me, you could help with this.
Okay. You have a little bitty scooter buddy living with you.
You can come right here on this side.
Hope he's not a baby black widow because he has a spot on him. No, he's pretty small. I don't think that they get that small.
We just not. I mean, a lot of people don't like mustards because mustards, they think they're bitter. But me and you ate them in our salad the other day, didn't we?
Did we?
Yeah.
I guess we did.
One time you can do that is if you're alone, and even then somebody will probably come wake you up.
Probably.
Gotta lock yourself in your bedroom for naps.
Someone with a flat tire.
Yes. You're never gonna let me forget that one, are you?
Nope. It's funny. I mean, we laughed about it too. That's like going to the racetrack and being mad that there was noise.
So in the old days, when people didn't have as much variety of food as we do today, by the time spring of the year come, or even in the winter, you know, they really starved for green things. So that was one thing. If they had greens growing, whether they were wild or if they grew turnip or mustard, if they could grow it through the winter, it helped them. A lot of people, it's like a tradition, and further in the spring, of course this is still winter, but they even relied on greens as their spring tonic to get their blood to moving. So now we've got them all de-stemmed. Corey's trying to save a spider that was on them. And now I'm going to rinse them in some cold water.
Come back, mister. Or missus.
So now I'm ready to put them in the pot. And greens are one of those things where it looks like you've got so many, but then once you start cooking them, they really cook down. So I'm going to add water to them, and I'm going to let them boil, just come to a boil, parboil them, and then I'm going to pour that liquid out, and I'm going to cover them again, and that time I'm going to use fatback to season them with. So I'm going to put my fatback and my salt and my pepper. Since I'm using fatback, I really don't need to add very much, if any, salt, because fatback, in case you didn't know, is also called like streakoline. Lots of various things people call it, but or streaked meat. We call it streaked meat or fatback. But anyway, it is salt pork, so it is very salty. So mostly I'll just need to add it and some pepper. But first I'm going to parboil these and drain them, and then start the actual cooking process after that with the meat. Okay, I'm going to chop up my salt pork into pieces. Some people, they go ahead, they put the meat in water and boil it and then add the greens to kind of, that's another variation. There's so many out there. And some people don't even use meat. They might use a little bit of bacon grease if they've got bacon grease on hand. They might use just a little bit of like olive oil or something like that. So those are all things that, variations that, like so many other things, each family kind of has their own way of doing things. And of course the amount of, if you do use meat, or whether you use bacon grease or whatever it is that you're using, that all again will depend on what you like. Personal preference is always important. And then also the amount of greens that you have. And whether you like them really meaty or just a hint of meat. And as I was saying earlier in the video, there's so many different meats that work well for this. Smoked hog jowl or ham hocks, that works especially well. Ham works good. I've even heard of people using smoked turkey, and that works good. It's just all personal preference. So I'm just starting by kind of browning my fat back that I'm using. At this point, a lot of people chop up an onion and put onion in it as well, but I'm not going to do that for us. But a lot of people do add onion. Now that some of the fat has rendered out of the fat back, I'm going to add my greens back in. And then I'll add water. So since I've added salt pork, I'm not going to add any salt right now, but I am going to add some pepper. You could add whatever other type of seasonings that you like as well. So now I'm going to kind of turn down the heat a little bit and just let them simmer. Probably for at least an hour, maybe even 2 hours. I'll check them after an hour and see, and then I'll taste this wonderful, what's going to happen with that liquid is it's going to turn into wonderful pot liquor is what we call it. So pot liquor is like the liquid that comes from beans or greens or even meat. Sometimes you'll hear people say that. And that wonderful liquid is so flavorful and it goes so well with cornbread. So a lot of people really love the liquid as much as they love the greens or the beans or whatever has been cooked. So we're going to put a lid on it and let it simmer a while. And then we'll check it. Keep an eye on it. And if you simmer it too high, then you'll need to continue to add some water. But I think we'll be good right there. We might need to add a little bit, but we're going to let it cook for now. Okay, now I'm going to get my black-eyed peas going. So I've let mine soak overnight. If you don't want to do that, you can parboil them for a few minutes and let them sit and then pour that off and then cook them. But I just think it's easier to let them soak overnight in water, and that way you're ready to go. So I'm going to drain off this water and add fresh now. And some people don't drain it off. Some people use that. But I like to get rid of it because sometimes there's little pieces of stuff in there that I miss. I can see some stuff floated to the top. I rinsed them and looked them. We look the beans in Appalachia to make sure there's no little piece of grit, or sometimes they'll be like a little hard, almost like a rock. I guess it is a rock, a little hard piece of soil, so you need to look them. Even if you buy them from the store, which I bought these, sometimes other things end up in them, so you need to look them and make sure that there's nothing else, no foreign stuff in there. Black-eyed peas are such a pretty, I think they're so pretty. You can see they're supposed to be the corn, represents the corn for some people. So I'm going to season these today with fat back. Traditionally, that's most commonly here at my house, that's what we would season beans or black-eyed peas or anything like that with a type of pork, whether that's ham pieces, some hog jowl, ham hocks, which is really popular for people to use, fat back, or just bacon even, or bacon grease. So I'm going to add some pieces though of fat back, and then I'm going to cover them with water, and we're going to cook them kind of low and slow too. And black-eyed peas do not take as long to cook. Like if I was going to do soup beans, pinto beans, I would cook them all day. These will not take that long, so I'm going to cook them maybe an hour, probably an hour, maybe an hour and a half. So since I'm using salt pork, I'm not going to worry about salting them just yet. I might taste them later on as they get closer, but I am going to add just some black pepper to them. And you could add again anything that you would like to add. So the greens have been cooking slowly for about 2 hours, I would say. They're tasting really good. I've already tasted it. The only thing I've done is I have added more salt. Like I said in the beginning, I was using salt pork, so I didn't want to add any. But as they begin to cook and I tasted the pot liquor there, the liquid, and a few greens, I realized they needed salt. So I have added additional salt. And now you can see how far they cook down. You remember they were really up high. So that's the thing with greens. They cook down into one of those things that actually reduce in volume as you cook. So I'm going to put them out into a smaller pot only because Matt's going to use this front eye where I'm at so that he can pressure pot our pork ribs that we're going to have with this meal. So Matt's about to pressure pot some ribs. So he's got ribs. Put some water over them with some salt and pepper. So once they come to pressure, they'll cook about 20 minutes and then they'll be done. The ribs will be. So with black-eyed peas and greens, you've got to have cornbread. So I'm going to mix up my cornbread. I have a cornbread recipe you can check out if you're interested to see how I make cornbread. See the secret of really good cornbread. The secret is to have a really hot pan. Gives you that wonderful, wonderful crust on the outside. Okay, we've got our traditional New Year's Day feast here. Of course, you got to have that good cornbread. Mustard greens look delicious. Forgot to get Matt any vinegar. He likes to put vinegar on his. Or lime juice.
Gross.
Hot liquor in them. These wonderful juices. If that wasn't enough, I made some mashed potatoes to go with all that.
I'm fixing to be healthy, wealthy, and wise and full.
So I hope you enjoyed seeing this traditional meal for New Year's Day here in Appalachia. I'm going to show you on my plate how I like to do it. I like, of course, the cornbread, but I go ahead and crumble it up. Then I put my black-eyed peas, or if I was eating soup beans, I do the same on top of them. Got to get some of that good pot liquor out of there. So good. Give me some greens. I like to put them on the edge of the cornbread, so some of that pot liquor soaks into it. Actually, I'm going to get me a little bit more with a better spoon. Put in. That's what the good part is. Of course, you got to have mashed potatoes. And some pork. I really like the other stuff better than the pork, but I will eat some of it, a little of it. So, I hope that you'll leave a comment and tell us, is this the meal you grew up with on New Year's Day? I did not, as I've already told you, but we like to eat it today. But as a kid, I didn't grow up doing that. So you can leave a comment and let me know if you did, if you're familiar with this. And I think that I'll go eat while it's hot. But I hope that you'll keep dropping back by while we talk about Appalachia, celebrate Appalachia, which includes, of course, a lot of foodways. So you've come back for seconds.
Yes, ma'am. Very, very good.
I don't know what's better, the greens or the black-eyed peas. Just drink the pot liquor, couldn't you, Dad?
Yep.
So good. This stuff's good.